Hey, everybody. I got two great guests on the show today, and they did something really special. I'm going to have to let them tell you about it because it's got so many dynamics to this thing. It's freaking ridiculous. And I am so glad that they're here to join us today. We have the director of the movie Summertime, Carlos López Estrada, and we have Raul Herrera here, and he's also part of this movie. And I am excited to find out what you guys did. So tell me a little bit about Summertime.
Thanks for having us, first of all. Summertime is a feature film that we did together. I got to direct it and I got to develop it and write it with this group of 27 spoken word poets from Los Angeles. I met them all through a nonprofit organization called Get Lit that promotes literacy through poetry. And we essentially got to, over the summer of 2019, develop, write, and shoot the entirety of the movie. So it was a very unconventional project, but it features all 27 of them as writers and actors of the piece. So there's a lot of heart in it, and I think we're just generally very proud of it, excited to put it out into the world.
Well, Carlos, I love poetry, and I unfortunately I don't see it as much in school. I work with a lot of kids, parents that I grew up with, and their kids, and they just don't have poetry as much. And I think that's very important because it really teaches you how to write and express yourself more than sometimes just story, because you really have to kind of keep it into like rhythm. Sometimes you have to put it so it has a specific flow to them, unlike a regular story. So I think this is really important.
Yeah, Raul. Yeah, I think this.
Yeah, no, of course. I think it's super important, and it's poetry, or at least communication is something that's like valued in like higher education. You have to take a communication class, you have to take a public speaking class, and those are all like how interpersonal communications. But I think like internal communication of like how to process emotions, how to emote, like how to carry a point using your voice and using your emotions. Maya Angelou once said, I may forget what someone told me, but I'll never forget how they made me feel. And that's what poetry, that's the power that poetry grants young voices, or just voices in general, but specifically in the context of this film, gives them, it empowers them to say their truth, say their story. And I think Carlos did such an amazing job at keeping it authentic and keeping it real. So I'm super, super excited to be a part of the project.
Now, you actually wrote some poetry for this particular movie, didn't you? So tell me a little bit about what you wrote.
Yeah, so I wrote a poem that comes at the latter half of the film called Clouds. And it's a poem that I wrote maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was a poem in response to losing my uncle in unfortunate circumstances. I didn't really get I had the chance to say bye to him, and I decided not to. I was like, oh, I'll just see him tomorrow. I'll just say hi to him next time. And he had passed away the next morning, and me really trying to, process what had happened, what I thought I had done. And it led me to construct a poem about time and how much we waste it, or how much we don't use it intentionally. And that's kind of what the poem speaks on.
So tell me a little bit about the rest of the poems that we have going on here, because obviously everybody has a different type of message. Everybody has a different type of style. So what are some of the other poems that were involved in Summertime?
Well, I think Raul can probably speak more specifically about the poems themselves, but what excited me the most about the project from the very beginning was that because of the way that Get Lit, the organization, works, they essentially recruit young poets from different schools all around LA. So you have people from north, south, east, west, and everything in between. And the population of the group is so incredibly diverse. Like, you have people from all sorts of ethnic and cultural backgrounds, very different life experiences. And they're all talking about their relationship to their communities, their relationships to their city. So it painted a picture of LA that was so different from anything I had seen, different from anything I had heard or felt about this city. So Raul, you can speak more specifically about sort of like the poets, but for me, what was most inspiring about this group of people was that it's not one particular poem that, like, poems are not existing on their own. It's like it's a mosaic that we're putting together, and all of these young artists are contributing their voice onto it, and then you take a step back and you see the big picture, and you can tell how all of our stories intersect, how, you know, all of our characters are like really affect the person next to us, and that's sort of like the magic of the city and the movie to me. Raul now, however, has worked with every single one of these poets for years and years and years. He used to coach. He's worked to get lit. He has a long, long history. So I don't know what. Yeah, how does?
What's something that dawned on me? So Emma, what we do as a part of, you know, the Get Lit curriculum, if you're a Get Lit player, if you're a coach, or if you're a teaching artist, every year we perform in front of thousands and thousands of students throughout the year at their high schools, and different events as well, but mostly at the high schools. So it just dawned on me that a lot of these poems that were in the film were poems that the poets had written prior to even knowing that they were going to be featured in this film. And so, but the people who have seen these poems that are on this movie now were these thousands of students that got to see these performers live at their school in their audiences. And what really makes Get Lit great, which is Carlos was touching on, was the diversity of it. Like, we need to have like poets from all different backgrounds because we're going to schools with all different backgrounds. So in order to make sure that we're reaching every single type of story, every single type of student, we have our staff, our poets need to also reflect that demographic or that diversity as well. So you're going to see poems about, poems about relationships. You're going to see poems about, being what it means to be, Korean in that culture. Like there's poems for almost nearly every type of person. So without spoiling too much, like you're going to find at least one poem that you can relate to.
Well, I don't know who this question would best be suited for, but what was some of the criteria to have your poem in this and be selected?
I mean, it was honestly not as complicated as it may seem, only because this community already existed. The work that Diane, who's the director of Get Lit, had been doing for years and years and years really paid off in casting the movie, because all of the poets that are in the film already had existing relationships to each other and to Get Lit. So it's not like we just put a call out and then anyone could apply. These are just people who had already been invested in the community, who had already been doing work with each other for so long. And essentially Diane just brought out like a list of names who were like the OGs and the all-stars of Get Lit, and that's really who we got to work with, which was incredible because most of them had not acted on a professional film set before. It was their first, like, their acting debut on screen, and I think it just made it so much more meaningful and so much less like scary of a thing to do when you're surrounded by like you really good friends who you've already been working in a really intimate way for years and years.
So Carlos, I got one more question for you, and then I got one for both of you guys, and I think this is going to be a fun one. But Carlos, what was one of the things that you really had a challenge with directing this particular movie? Was there any challenges at all? I know it's probably a little bit different than something you're used to, but what were some of the fun parts? What were some of the challenges?
I mean, I think the challenge was also the most unique and special thing about it, and it was just working with 27 different writers, performers, working with people who hadn't necessarily put together a movie before, and essentially just like handing them the reins and just saying like, we are designing this movie around your work, we are designing this movie around your person. Tell us what's important to you, and then we'll find a way to creatively incorporate it into the thing. And yeah, as you mentioned, that's not how movies are normally put together. That's not it's an unusual way to collaborate, and it was a little bit scary just because there was so much uncertainty. There was so much of us are like letting go and saying, we believe in these voices and we believe in that we're going to do something that's worthwhile. How exactly we get there, we have no idea. And that was the hardest thing, especially for me as a director, when like, your ultimate goal is to have like a crystal clear vision and like ultimate control over every single detail on the frame. This was the opposite. It was just like, how do you have as little control as possible and share it with a bunch of people? But that ultimately ended up being the most beautiful thing about the project. And I think that the movie feels real and it feels special to me just because all of these poets were able to like really put their voices into it, and it's not my thing, it's like our thing, and that's what I love the most about the movie.
Okay, here's a little bit of a fun question for both of you. I don't know who wants to start, but obviously there's lots of poems, and probably one poem hit you hard. Maybe it was a good feeling that you got. Maybe it was just a reminisce of something that happened to you that's like, man, I can relate to that. What was that particular poem for each of you guys? And Raul, you can't say your own.
I'll say Raul's, just because it's at the end of the movie, and I feel like it's when it's really sort of like the thesis of the film, and it's sort of like the spiritual core of what it is that we're trying to do. People coming together and giving each other their time because we believe in this, larger thing than ourselves. So I'll say Raul's.
How about you, Raul?
I would have to say Marquisha's, and there's so much that goes into that because I've known Marquisha since they were a teenager. I happened to be teaching a class at a school that they were a student at, actually a school that David Diggs, who was in Blindspotting, also in Hamilton, he was their Marquisha's primary instructor, and I was just a substitute. So that's kind of how I met Marquisha. And then I told Marquisha, join Get Lit. She did. And then she had written that poem, and I had seen that poem being performed so many times. And not once was I ever like, oh, here it is again. It's every time she brings that energy that it feels like she just wrote it yesterday. Like it's just so raw and so honest. And so it has to be Marquisha's. And yeah, definitely. And if I could speak on a couple of things, I think what's really cool about Summertime too is Get Lit is an educational organization. Summertime reflects a lot of that talent and a lot of that work that Get Lit has done to like institute this curriculum that helps students find their voices. And what's really great now is we're continuing, that spirit through these summertime lesson plans that we're giving to free to all educators, to all teachers. And big shout out to Tiger Tails Media for providing the funding that we're able to give these free lesson plans to teachers all over the world. It uses this platform called Universe, where students from all over the world, it doesn't matter if you're in the same classroom or in India or Bangladesh, it doesn't matter. You can respond to poems on the Universe website, and you can respond to other people's poems too. You can respond to response poems. And so it's just super great. Please, y'all, check out the free lesson plans that we're giving out. You can find it at getlit.org/summertime-curriculum. We worked really hard on it, and it pairs really well with the movie. So I'm excited that it's continuing on in so many different forms.
You actually kind of jumped the gun because I was like right about to ask you that. So you must have some type of telepathy or something that's getting inside my head, which is pretty cool. So if I was a teacher, how can I use this for my students? What are some of the things that I can do that would help enhance their poetry writing or confidence? What would be some of the goals for this?
Well, I think especially in the times that we're on now, like there's so many students who kind of taken a back seat to their education, whether it's through Zoom fatigue or the lack of they just they don't have the technology to, be really present at school. What the curriculum does well is it reconnects all those students. It covers issues on mental health. It gives them a space to talk about that. It helps them, it increases their social emotional learning skills, their writing skills, their literacy skills. And the lesson plans, each lesson plans comes with modifications. So there's modifications for EL learners, there's modifications for gifted and talented students. We have those modifications. So it doesn't matter what kind of classroom type you have, we got it covered in this curriculum. So if you're looking for a way to help your students increase their literacy, give them a space to empower themselves through personal narratives, through telling of their stories, this is definitely, you're at the right place.
Well, I really love stuff like that. My show here was originally designed because art saved my life. I mean, I wasn't bad or anything like that, but I was never good at sports. And if it really wasn't for art, I wouldn't have anything. And I know a lot of kids that are in tough situations, like school just wasn't for them, so they started to create trouble. They get in, mixed in with the wrong places, and they become at-risk youth, and they just don't know really how to express themselves because they feel like they're stupid because kind of school failed them. And so I believe that art saves lives and art can change things, and I wanted to invoke art to help kids stay away from the gang, stay away from the drugs, stay away from all this other stuff, and do something positive and still get their word out. This is exactly one of those art forms that can do that so well, and I like that. I think you're on the right track.
And it starts with rebranding what poetry is. I disliked poetry in high school because for that exact reason, it made me feel dumb. I don't speak like this. I don't talk like this. And if this is taught at school, this is what smart is supposed to look like, sound like, feel like. And so I had a really, tumultuous relationship with poetry. And then I found poetry in my own way. I found poetry through hip hop. And that hip hop led me back to academia by getting me excited to learn more about myself and learning how to present myself and express myself. So it starts with changing what poetry is. And summertime, that's all it is. It's like, I didn't know, I hear that all the time. I didn't know poetry was like that. I always thought it had to rhyme. I always had to be an iambic pentameter. No, poetry is just you sharing your feelings, and that's a poem.
Now, I think this is also important too. It's like, I know through stats and facts that people that take like an art class or music class during their academic career each year seem to do better in class. Do you see that same thing for people that are writing poems? Are they, when they start this up, do their grades improve? Because that's important.
Yeah, so we have those stats as well from surveys that we give out. I think 100% of the students that are involved with the Get Lit curriculum note that they have there's a positive change in their mental health. A lot of students, I think about like 80 to 90% are more engaged in the classroom after taking the Get Lit curriculum. So we definitely have the data and the evidence to show that as well. And I think what poetry does is it grounds you. If you don't know who you are, what you're feeling, why would you invest in your own future if you don't even know who you are in the first place? Poetry provides a mirror and gives students awareness. So the more you know about yourself, the more you care about yourself. And if you care about yourself more, you're going to be invested in your education, your future, your relationships, your emotional processes. Like that's what poetry does, is it brings awareness to yourself. Absolutely.
And Carlos, one of the things that I always like to ask people that create a movie is, when it first started out, you have like this little baby that you're basically creating, and you're trying to mold it and shape it, and just like we would with our kids. And then when they grow up and it's ready to be seen on the world, you hope that it reflects what you originally engulfed in it. So from the start of the project to the end, did it come out the way that you envisioned it? And did it change much? And how proud of you are of the final product?
No, I mean, I'll say yes, it did. And the only sort of like gauge for its success that I have is that I met the poets 2.5 years ago in a spoken word showcase. And I remember just stepping out of it and having these really powerful feelings about what I just experienced and myself. And I remember just standing there and just thinking, what I just experienced is so important and so profound. I hope that I can find a way to share this experience or to bring this experience to other people, because I feel like a lot of people could benefit from this. And I watched the movie today, and I get that same feeling that I had when I first met the poets in that showcase, and all like my brain travels in a million different directions like it did when I first saw them perform live. So to me, that is accomplishing what I would hope the movie would accomplish, and then everything else is sort of like out of my hands. But I feel like we were able to capture that like magic that exists in the poets and their poetry. So I'm super happy with it.
Do you guys have poetry houses out there? Because I don't here, and I would love to go to one, but I don't know. Do you guys still have them out there with COVID? Did that kind of shut things down if you had them, or the coffee shops or anything where people can just go write and speak poetry?
A lot of it has been moved to virtual. A lot of open mics. There's some open venues that do have poetry readings, but for the most part, a lot of them are virtual. We did have this thing called the Summertime Block Party, which is featuring all of our poets, also people from the community who, we had musicians, we had, Carlos was playing the drums. Like, it was this summertime block party throughout the day. That was outside, and it was kind of like, it wasn't an open mic, but it was, an open place to be inspired, to listen to amazing artists. And so yeah, my question is most of them are virtual still. So the pandemic definitely has shifted the places, or at least like how you access those places, definitely has changed.
All right, guys, we got about 3 minutes. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can find out about your curriculum program that you got out, how they can find more about your organization, and of course, how can they find the movie?
Well, I can start by just saying that the movie's going to be available digitally very soon, at the end of this month, on all kinds of platforms, iTunes and Amazon and Google Play and whatnot. So that, we're excited about that, because we had a theatrical run, which I think was really exciting to be able to see all the poets on the big screen. But now I feel like we're going to be able to reach a lot more people, and people are going to be able to have them to watch as much as they want at home and show it to anyone they care about. So that's exciting for us. And then Raul, if you want to let them know, where can the educational components be found?
Yeah, well, you can start off by just visiting getlit.org. We have so many programs offered to youth. We have events every month, like our open mics. We have an event at the Promenade every month as well. So please, if you're a youth and you're looking to for somewhere to develop your skills as a writer and artist, go to the getlit.org. Now, if you're an educator, if you're in administration, teaching and things like that, please also visit the Get Lit website. But like I said earlier, there's a curriculum button right at the top. You just click curriculum. There's also a summertime curriculum. Please click that. You can get your free lesson plans. There's 6 of them. You can get your free lesson plans even today. You can do it right now. And it's by going to getlit.org/summertime-curriculum. And it's there for free. We got, like I said, we acquired funding to be able to do that by Tiger Tails Media. So I'm just really grateful. We're all really grateful. So that's how you'd be able to access it.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to say that link again, because it sounds a little crazy, but you got to say free at least 4 more times, because that's
free. Getlit.org/summertime-curriculum now.
Hey, that was pretty good. That's pretty good. So how can people follow you if they have anything personally? Do you have a website or anything that you want to say?
If you want to reach me, I post pretty often my poems and my poetry via Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's right_away_Raul. I believe it's the same on Facebook as well. Yeah, that's my primary. If you want to check out what I'm doing and what I'm up to, that'd be your best bet.
Can't leave you out, Carlos. How can people follow you if they want to check out what you got going on?
I mean, I feel like most of my life has been into the summertime Instagram at Summertime Movie 2021. Yeah, I have an Instagram too, but I can't say that I'm the most exciting Instagram person. So maybe just follow Summertime the movie.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for coming on and sharing this wonderful curriculum, this wonderful movie. And I really hope it inspires people to try writing, because I think anybody can. I don't really believe there's a right or wrong to it. And I believe that it can save lives, change lives, and just enhance lives too. And thank you for sharing your project with me.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I got to take a quick commercial break. We do have to pay bills, and we will be back after that. Okay, so don't go anywhere.
Like, OMG, you were on TV and junk.